So 64% of Lebanese land is agriculture, is arable land. And we do have the water resources, we do have the capital, human capital, we have the financial capital, and yet we import 85% of our food. This is the latest World Bank. Does this work now?
Try.
Okay, it does work. So in the region, we're advantaged. We have the competitive advantage. Out of our land, 65% is arable land. Most of it now is unarable for many reasons we can talk about. We have the labor, the capital, we have the renewable resources, plenty of sunshine, plenty of wind. We have the water, we have the land, and yet we do import more than 85% of our food. So there's something missing here. And I think what we're going to be discussing today is unraveling a little bit of that, what is missing. And I think I would like to summarize that. Innovations in agriculture, we lost our competitive advantage and the commitment. There has to be a political will. Unfortunately, if you look at SADR, the last report, if you look at many of the reports coming out of our policymakers, agriculture does not register. We need to acknowledge that Lebanon is an agrarian society, and we need to really acknowledge that there has to be a way to invest in agriculture and build that agriculture economy. So I'm really delighted that we're all here exploring that dimension. My biggest message that I'd like maybe to explore today, that this challenge is a triple helix concept. We need to work together as government, as industry, and academia. AUB is a good platform. AUB is a reputable organization that has proven itself for the last 153 years to be a light of hope in that region. I think we can catalyze that, develop that platform to really connect the science towards a more informed policy making when it comes to agricultural investment. And I think a lot of the discussion Abbas and I have spoken earlier, and I think this could be a good platform for our discussion. So what does, I say here FAFS role, but what's the academia role? And this is extracted from the FAFS strategic plan, and I think it's very relevant today. The wisdom in the past, you used to have a large piece of land that to make a living, a decent living in Lebanon and in the region, and you don't have that, we don't have that luxury. So most of our landowners have been fragmented, 1 to 5 to 10 dunums of land. So how could you make a decent living and have a family? How can you improve health, livelihood of people and small landowners to be sustainable economically, socially, and environmentally? And I think the bottom line here is that we need to develop system-based solutions, and I'll give some of these examples. Most of the knowledge as of today in terms of technology is imported to Lebanon, and small farmers cannot afford it. So unless we really localize these know-how, we cannot bridge the gap that we have. So design in-country novel technologies, we can talk about this later. Artificial lighting, there's a lot of opportunities for us to really look into artificial lighting, enhancing productivity, hydroponic, vertical farming, organic products. In the design aspect, I give you one example. If you look at the photosynthesis equation, most of us have taken this photosynthetic equation back in the first or second science, back in the high school. Only 10% of the water that goes into that equation is converted into carbohydrate. 90% of the water went into evaporation from the atmosphere. So what if we create that magic plant that's going to use 100% of that water? How much water we save? So this is where the R&D is going in now. When we have a genetic modification, I'm not talking about GMOs, I'm talking about somatal opening and closing to regulate the water use. The biggest challenge that we can help is to facilitate investment in precision technologies. All of these technologies require high level of investment. Maybe we can help with mobilize that investment. Help open local and international markets. Maybe later on I'll cite an example. Most of us have actually lost trust in our local produce, which is really dangerous because of safety of the food. So how could we really regain that trust and open local and international market. This is very important. Number 4 goes back to the definition of what agriculture. Agriculture is not only when you produce food, it's when you preserve your own biodiversity and design multi-purpose landscape for human and ecosystem health. Ecosystem services is part of the discipline. That water that everybody says we should dam every river, that may not be true, because we need to have ecosystem water that really keeps that biodiversity in the system. So we really need to be careful about what we think intuitively. So ecosystem services is part of our discipline. This is very important. We have a conversation before we walked in about diet-related diseases. Agriculture is important to human health because of diet-related diseases and designing the proper diets. Everybody's talking about the Mediterranean diet. I think there's a lot of opportunities for us here to really move scale that discussion up. Last but not least is food safety, food losses. 40 to 50% of the food we produce in the region goes to waste. And there has to be a different way in which we can reduce those food losses. So that's kind of an overarching platform in which science can help bridge that gap. I'd like to share with you a few initiatives that we're working on, and maybe that can help also stimulate. Problems today are very complex, where water is connected to food, is connected to health. And we really need to look at these system approaches, understand these complexities, so that we can help design solutions to reduce the interdependencies. I'll give you an example. If we have a drought in the region, we will have a famine. So how could we reduce these interdependencies? So if we have a drought, we don't induce famine. We don't induce electricity problem, because electricity is also dependent on water. So how can we understand these at the system level, these complexities? Many of us, parts of our heart is at this beautiful facility, which is ERIC, the Agricultural Research and Education Center. We're looking into ERIC to become an innovation hub for all of these challenges that we talked about. We cannot do this alone. We need to look into these partnerships. We need to advocate. We need to develop the agriculture lobby, if that's the right word. We need to lobby for the sector. And all of us have responsibilities and role there. So I'm gonna stop here. And I know that there are a lot of examples, but I know that Abbas is prepared to give us a lot of these examples, and we can come back to this if needed.
Thank you everybody for being here tonight. Actually, I would like to thank AUB and our active council and everybody who worked hard to make this panel happen. And tonight I will present some opportunities in the agricultural sector. And in my presentation, I will start by giving an overview about the agricultural sector. Then I will talk about the agri-tech investment opportunities. When I will talk about investment in agriculture, I will talk in 2 levels: investing in agriculture as agricultural projects, and investment in technology that we can use in agriculture. Then I will talk about the competitive advantage that we have in Lebanon, where we can be a good place or a good country to host such investments. I will give some case studies and the socioeconomic impact for those projects. And finally, I will introduce IDAL and the role of IDAL as a governmental institute, and how we can play a role to help investors to establish their business in Lebanon.
It's a little different with PDFs, and I was kind of figuring that it would work, but I can.
So the agricultural sector represents 3.5% as a contribution to the GDP, which is the lowest in comparison with the other sectors. Actually, this sector employs around 6% of the Lebanese labor force. In terms of the progress of this in terms of how far this sector is contributing to the economy, we can find that fruit and vegetables represent 62% of production, and then fruits 31%. But then we can find that 5.7% wheat and others. So mainly fruit and vegetables are the main producers in this sector. If you can see the next, the progress of contribution of this sector to the GDP, we can find that at 2004, the contribution of the GDP of this sector to the GDP was 6.1, and now it's 3.5, not 3.8. It's around here, and the progress of export declining from 600,000 in 2013 to 300 in 2018, and then we're going to see why this problem, or facing this problem. Mainly, we are facing this problem because the Lebanese agriculture sector declining as a result of several challenges we are facing on all levels. And production levels, we have a low productivity in terms of quantity and quality. The structure of sector is, we have problems. Structure of sector, small average holding sizes of lands, as Dr. mentioned just a few minutes ago. In terms of financials, we have financial instability. There's a rising land and transport cost. The land cost is a very big problem facing farmers, as there's a lot of competition between the real estate sector and agriculture sector. Fluctuation of power cost and lack of sustainable financial support. The inflows of government support is not sustainable. Limited research services, and there is another problem related to the education and the linkages between the universities and farmers. So those are the main challenges that we are facing in this sector. When we are talking about this sector, we are not talking just about the Lebanese market. The regional market, and mainly the MENA market, is huge. We are talking about a market with $48 billion value expected to be in 2022 with annual growth of 4%. So it's a huge market. There's a lot of potential to invest in this sector, but we need to invest in the right way. So what is the right way? As we mentioned before, is to adopt new technologies. Adopting new technologies is using new technology to produce agricultural projects and to invest in new technologies. What is new technologies and how we can invest in, and what are the major opportunities existing now? New technologies mainly is controlled environmental agriculture, which is, we can talk about hydroponic, aeroponic, and vertical farming. We can talk mainly more about the technicality of those systems, but there's a lot of advantages of using this kind of new technology, mainly by higher yields and how we can control and we assure the stock stability and the quality of production. When we gonna adopt this kind of technology, for sure, this gonna lead the demand on a lot of products in the technology itself. So there's a lot of opportunity to invest in a lot of product in the technology, like air and soil sensors, crop sensors, agricultural robots, and precision agriculture, and closed ecological system like vertical farming. There's another opportunities in this sector, like aqua farming. We have to mention that 20% of the local demand. And aqua farming just produced in Lebanon, and we import all the other consumption. And there's a lot of demand in the region, and this demand is growing very fast. This is one of the examples of new techniques that we can use in this sector, and we can talk about it mainly technically later in details. Another opportunity, it's packing houses, mainly certified packing houses. One of the main obstacles of our products is to have certified packing houses with HACCP and ISO. We launched a program 5 years ago to support a lot of exporters to get those licenses. Out of 200 packing houses in Lebanon, just 10% of them now, due to our program, are certified. So just 10% accept our help to be certified. So there's a lot of work to do. We need to improve our packing houses and cooling centers to be on the standards, to meet the standards, international standards, to help our export to increase and to tap new markets. What are our competitive advantages? Our competitive advantage already, Dr. Rabi listed our competitive advantage in agriculture. But I want to concentrate here on our competitive advantages in technology. For investing in technology, we have a lot of good factors and indicators that help us, or we can put it for investors to come and invest in technology, mainly in products that can help the agricultural sectors. Based on World Competitiveness Report, overall the quality of education in Lebanon ranked 18th, okay? And the quality of math and science ranked 4th. This is one of the main indicators that can help us to say that we have a good education system that can help investors to rely on our skilled labor. So this is one of the main access to human capital factors that help investors to rely on our good skilled human capital. It's good to say that the American University of Beirut ranked first all over the universities in the MENA region and the Middle East. And we have around 3 universities ranked on the top of the 400 universities worldwide. So this is one of the other indicators that can say that we have a good quality of education system, and we have around 500 graduates every year in information and communication technology. Another term, we can say that our engineers are not just highly qualified and we have good skilled labor. In terms of cost, we are the lowest cost. The median annual wage of software engineer in Lebanon, in Beirut, is 23K per year, which is the lowest. It's 27% lower than any engineer in the GCC, and 55% lower in comparison in other cities in Europe or Asia. So this is another advantage. Another advantage or another competitive advantage is the access to finance. We have a lot of programs in Beirut help investors to access to finance. I have to talk later about the role of IDAL, how we can help investors to establish their business in Lebanon by providing a lot of tax exemptions and a lot of support. And then we can talk about the financial guarantees from Kafalat, where there's a lot of loans and subsidized loans and guaranteed. And there's the equity financing through Circle 331. Nowadays, it's not the same as what happened during the last 3 days, where the central bank injected about $600 million in the market and helped a lot of startups to do their business. But there's still a lot of voice of this circular, and we have 8 VCs firms. And recently we have a new fund for people who are gonna work, mainly for startups, who are gonna work in telecom sector to start their business. This fund is about $48 million. It just launched 6 months ago, I think. So there's a lot of funds and supports in financial terms, help new investors and startups to establish their business and get the real sources of finance to do their business, to invest in technology, mainly technology. I want to give you some case studies here about investing in agriculture. This case is about controlled environmental culture project for different kind of producers, mainly in vegetable. To build such a project, we need about 10 months for design and construction and 12 months for production for harvesting. The cost of this project is about $700,000, mainly as a main investment in capex. The return or the net present value of this project after 10 years will be about $2.6 million. With an IRR of 71% and payback period of 4 years. The land surface of this project needed is 500 square meters, 5,000 square meters. Another case study is for vertical farming to produce saffron. Why saffron? Saffron, one of the big products that there is a big demand of this products actually. The world value or market value of this product is about $2 billion and they're growing with a percentage of 13% annually. It's growing very fast. There's a lot of demand on this product and they call it the red gold. They sell it by grams. Okay, but why is that expensive? Because it's too hard to make it, and we need a lot of surface, which is not available in Lebanon. While in Lebanon, the climate, it's very suitable, but we don't have the surface that can help to do such product. Vertical farming could be a solution. So vertical farming could be a solution, and it's possible. Mainly the main investment is a little bit big for small surface, which is 10,000 square meter, and it will generate about $2 million over 10 years. With an IRR of 59% and payback period of 5 years.
Are we going to be able to compete with Spain and Iran with prices?
With the high demand,
quality?
with the quality, I'm sure we can compete. With the prices,
what about productivity?
With the high demand, and the growing market, it's possible.
Okay. What about productivity? Like, let's say Iran, they have big numbers of.
We can.
I'll talk about it. We have actually at ERIC, we have a saffron production.
I know the guys in but the guy who does one guy for now. We have, I believe.
What is vertical?
Vertical, maybe you can explain more.
It's actually one of the new technologies to reduce the amount of land is to go vertical. So I'll give you an example. A greenhouse of a 10 by 50 meters would be equivalent in terms of number of plants per area 50 times more intensive as compared to in the field, because you're going vertical and you can stack those plants.
How do they get lighting? You put artificial light?
Sometimes it
Like
depends on the
shelving?
design.
Are you talking terracing, جليلي?
Yeah.
It depends.
It depends on the design. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, depending how intense.
Is that a less water intense form of agriculture as well? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Absolutely, yes, because if it's done indoor, you capture, so the evapotranspiration is a fraction of what's outside because the humidity is very, very high.
So
Now, the problem that you need to worry about is diseases, because high humidity attracts a bit more of fungal diseases. But in terms of water use, it cuts it down by more than 90%.
And there is some systems, maybe you can control the diseases, and you can put some stuff to control the disease, which is make the productivity more consistent, and you can control the quality and the quantity of production. And this is one of the main advantages.
So this would be important for drought resiliency as well.
For reducing the water use, correct?
And less energy use.
And that's absolutely, yes. Because you don't till, and then you could there are a lot of technologies today with specific lighting that you could design lighting system to increase the efficiency of photosynthesis.
And finally, I will give you a small idea about snail farming, which is not related to new technologies, but this kind of project is for small business investment, which is about $100,000 and for a space of 10,000 square meters, with a return of about 0.6 million and IRR 55%, with a payback period of 2 years. We can talk later about it if somebody interested. We can explain later about more details.
What's NPV, please?
It's
NPV.
net present value, the net present value. So those projects have an impact, a social impact in the society and in the economy. So as Habib mentioned before, there's another perspective for those investments and the impact of those investments on the society and on the economy. So mainly, as we can see here, that a lot of cities like Rotterdam in Netherlands and many other examples from around the world are a perfect model on how greenhouses have reshaped the local economy and boost jobs and create spillover effects on other industries. The effect, the socio-economic impact of those investments are job creation, improve and develop the rural areas, improve the skills of the local forced laborers, and generate more income to the government, for sure, from taxes and other way. At the same time, this responds to the SDGs, the Social Development Goals of the United Nations, where we can reduce poverty, reduce hunger, improve the quality of education, decrease work and achieve growth, economic growth, and improve the innovation. So finally, we have some recommendations. Finally, before the recommendation, I will end up by give you some information about IDAL and the role of IDAL as a governmental entity. IDAL is a governmental institute related directly to the Prime Minister. It's the Investment Development Authority of Lebanon. Our role is to help investors and help exporters at the same time to establish their business in Lebanon. Doing so, we are acting as export promotion agency and investment promotion agency. In terms of investment, we provide a lot of market intelligence. We help investors to get all the needed license for their business, and we provide a package of incentives like tax exemptions and other incentives. In terms of export, we have programs that support export and agriculture, let's say. We have a program called Agri Plus. We can help export to improve their quality of packaging and improve the packing houses. The result of this program, please go ahead, was positive in the launching, but after 2015, due to the war in Syria and the closing of the borders between Jordan and Syria, we have a big drop here, and we try to solve this problem by creating a new program, which is a bridge, maritime bridge, by creating a maritime line between Lebanon and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, as 90% of our exports are to the GCC and Arabic countries, but due to the other problems, we couldn't increase our exports. Actually, those problems related to production, quality, and new regulations related to certifications and what we've been talking about, the quality certifications and new technology that we need to adopt to increase our qualities, to meet new regulations in all other countries and all other markets. On the other hand, we improved a lot of packing houses. As I said, 20 packing houses have been certified, and there is another packing house on the road. And we are working to improve those packing houses. Finally, my recommendation that there's a lot of work to be done between the government, private sector, and university. This is the same recommendation that Mr. Rabi just mentioned before. We have to work together to create a platform of collaboration to achieve the main goal that we are all talking about. Thank you very much.
Because we can all sit here, right? Well, thank you both. This was incredibly, first of all, educational certainly for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people here, and very interesting. Before we get into the specific Q&A, I'd like to gauge a little bit the audience and understand who's who. How many people here are in the agricultural business or in a tangential part of the agricultural business? Okay. How many here are in the investment business or are investors in areas that are in, okay, great. And how many here are AUB alums? Okay, and one last question. How many here are here because you emotionally care about the farmers and agriculture in Lebanon? I thought that. Okay, so I'm here, as I said, wearing two hats, but let me just focus on the SEAL hat for a second and introduce the organization and what really brought us together. SEAL stands for Social and Economic Action for Lebanon, a 501c3 organization based here in New York. And essentially that raises money from primarily the Lebanese community, as well as foundations and organizations in the US to fund projects, micro projects all over Lebanon to create that sustainable income. And essentially for the lower segment of the population, the lower income generating segment of the population. We've been doing a lot of projects around agriculture in what we call lands and agricultural development. So helping farmers by planting trees, apple trees, olive trees, helping farmers by donating equipment for better harvesting and more efficient harvesting. We've done a lot of projects around water utilization, irrigation systems, digging water wells in areas where farmers had typically had to hold water to irrigate their lands. We've done increasingly projects to facilitate the commercialization of the production in packaging centers, in helping cooperatives add value to the production through end products, and providing scale to actually commercialize and sell the products. We've also helped other segments of food production, essentially the fishermen industry, which is an industry under a lot of strain. And what we saw over the years, that while the recipients of the grants we were giving were very thankful, and every time we would go to visit a project, the whole town would receive us and thank us again years after we made the grants. We were struggling amongst ourselves to make sure that we're actually investing in the right long-term sustainable projects, and that those projects had long-term sustainable income. And one of the things that really bothered us, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, is that the recipients to our grants were increasingly older and older in age. And the young people were leaving their farms, and the young people wanted to work in the sexy industries like IT. And that's not obviously sustainable by pure demographics. So we actually reached out to AEB, and Rabi have been instrumental in helping us develop this relationship with SEED to actually conduct studies on our projects retroactively and prospectively to assess where we should be investing. Should we be investing with apple producers when our apples are going to waste at the end of the day and they're not selling? On the other hand, we're seeing the rise of new industries like the wine industry. We used to only drink Mizar in New York, and in the last few years, we're seeing Masaya, we're seeing Kefraya, we're seeing a whole bunch of new brands that have access to foreign markets, and increasingly we're seeing farmers turn their lands into into grapes rather than apples or other produce. We're seeing the olive industry also prosper and starting to reach the international markets. And in my opinion, but I'd be interested in your view as well, a lot of it has come from the fact that people have found the demand and have gotten together to get scale to be able to access markets where people are buying the production. And finally, as a venture capitalist in the United States, for the last 30 years or so, we've been investing in software and hardware products, which is the innovation and the tech economy. And in the last 5 years or so, agribusiness and agricultural IT-driven investments have become the hottest area to invest in. Investing in robotics for better production, better harvesting, better yields, investing in sensor technologies. We've invested in a drone company that basically floats over different types of crop productions and feeds information and big data analytics to the farmers to figure out how to better increase their yields. So with all that on the table, what I find very interesting in your production, in your presentation, is that we're now seeing a top-down approach to how to help an entire sub-industry. Because the farmers, at the end of the day, are going to have a very hard time attracting investors like us to invest in a very specific initiative. They're not sophisticated per se, they're not thinking IRR and NPV, they're thinking about how to get the most out of their lands. But I think initiatives that are at a high level, whether they're produced by government agencies or academic institutions that guide an entire industry to come together to come up with a competitive advantage, to come up with a new market for the production, and provide opportunities for investors to generate financial returns, because at the end of the day, we all get fired if we don't generate financial returns, and at the same time hit the social aspect of our investments. That's where I think all the parties come together. So I'm going to tee up a few questions, then I think we really need to turn this into an interactive session. I'll just be the cop to make sure that we're not all talking over each other, but just to get the conversations going. Today, if I wanted to invest in Lebanon in a very specific industry that you think has the most promising potential, give me one. Wine, olives, technologies that are improving the yields, one.
You want a quick one?
Yes.
Why?
Okay. Why?
Why? Because when you have a good product with high quality, with good reputation, with low cost, you can sell everywhere. But if you can ask about opportunities for long term, there's another answer.
I'm not sure. Because only those top three of the wine industry are making money. The rest are struggling because of markets. I think without government intervention and opening up new markets, that some of the smaller, we had several of our graduates are entering that market. It's very difficult to penetrate the wine market at the moment. is dominated by top 3 or 4 major producers. The rest are struggling. So I mean, there has to be, the government has to ease up some regulations to entice the smaller, younger winemakers. And I would argue that probably Arak, because Arak, we don't have enough grapes to satisfy our local demand. And I mean, that's an area that we're ignoring.
My answer was, as a quick answer, was a quick win as investor. Okay, not as governmental representative, not as academic, and I agree with you. And I just said as a quick win, and I have another answers. So as investors, somebody who's looking for fast money, you can go for wine for sure.
I mean, you mentioned one of our biggest advantage, our competitive advantage is in our olive oil. That industry has suffered tremendously, mainly because of market and quality control. If there are markets that, and they're connected, we don't have a known brand. I mean, I lived for 32 years in the US. You go in and you go after a brand that you know, you trust, and that brand is going to give you the quality year after year. That's an area that I think we need to invest in, is standardizing the olive oil and marketing it so that it can really, our cuisine is known, and I think that could follow.
This is long-term opportunity.
There's a few questions here, please go ahead.
Well, for me, what I see as even a more fundamental problem is.
Sorry, can everybody hear in the back the questions?
What I see as a more fundamental problem is a problem of infrastructure and distribution. So if you've got the product and you have no way of distributing it, or do you have distribution networks? And in terms of really basic stuff that we take completely for granted here, like electricity, internet, these things need to be solved before we can address more complicated or more fragile systems like in agriculture. So I'd love to know how the government is addressing those problems of infrastructure.
You have the tough question. I'll take the easy ones.
Everybody's seeing Abbas as a government today, so you have a big problem.
Mr. General Counsel? So, do you want to answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's limit our question about the agriculture sector. We're going to open the discussion about all the other sectors and the infrastructure and all other things.
Which is
I think,
dependent.
okay, but we cannot close this session until tomorrow. So let's keep our discussion in the agriculture sector.
But that doesn't answer the
There is, I'll come to your defense, right? So when we talk about data analytics, drones, things like that, that's dependent on bandwidth, right? When we talk about installing generators, bringing electricity to the factories, to the wine production, in fact, that all of that depends on basic infrastructure. But to the government's defense or lack of, the wine industry happened by the private sector, correct me if I'm wrong, right? The government had nothing to do with it. So there's also an argument to be said of enough waiting for the government to fix the problems, because we could be waiting for a long time. And in certain cases, and we have a very specific case study here, which we should be proud of and try to replicate, that the private sector came together and created an association, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know my facts that well, created an association that pulled together the resources of all the wine producers. And you're right that 4 brands are benefiting the most, but as far as I know, a lot of farmers are producing grapes and selling to those brands. So there's an indirect ripple down effect from the success of that industry. Am I right? So what did that industry do right, and what could be replicated? And how can organizations like SEAL or investors in the room do it in another industry and reap the rewards of a similar type of experience?
I mean, it's a very complicated question, but I think I go back to your earlier comment, which is by the way, the week I left, we had a big conference in our faculty, mainly at the request of big data analytics, coming up to us saying, we have all of this know-how, and do you have a problem that we can solve? I think I go back to the original question about expanding the stakeholders, because I think there's a lot of talents in terms of the science, there's a lot of interest in the investment to really rebuild that sector. Let's capitalize on that. I'm not too familiar with the wine sector per se, maybe Abbas have more specifics, but I think that there is a prime time today that the stars are aligned. There is interest in the private sector, there's certainly at AUB, there is a lot of momentum to really revitalize that sector. And I think that's just to capture that moment.
There was a question here, but
So there are,
can you stand up and speak up so
Yeah,
that
of
people in the back can hear you?
you said there are between 3 and 4 very large grape producers who have proprietary brands and have prospered in foreign markets, right? So I don't drink very much Lebanese wine, but when I do, it's at a very nice restaurant and it's very expensive. And I imagine that's the type of luxury these brands have thrived on and need to maintain. So there's less room for other luxury brands to perhaps step in and take part of that market share. Is there room for perhaps a lower end wine from the shared resources? Like you said, many grapes are being given to this cartel that are not, I assume not all of them are being used, the top are being used. Is there room, for example, with the resources that exist for a lower quality label that's sold locally or in local markets, the luxury of Lebanese wine at a lower price tag?
Did everyone hear the question? Did you hear the question in the back?
Yeah.
I'll repeat the question very quickly, that there's a perception that the wine cartel, we're gonna call it cartel even though there's
There's a friendlier
you
word.
used that word, I didn't. That there's an oligopoly of 4 producers that are benefiting and they're all very high-end wines, and every time that we try Lebanese wine in New York, it's very expensive. Is there room for lower-end wines and allow more production for maybe lower quality grapes?
I think there's a question of cost. The cost is very high, and we have this niche market. When you do exports, you don't have to export in all levels. If you have opportunity in some niche market, you have to just pick up the opportunity that you have and you work on it. The niche market that we have, the opportunity that we have is just on the high quality because of the high cost and because of the quality that we have.
Unless it's mass production, which we don't have the land to produce.
I 100% agree. And there's another dimension. With the mass production, with the lower cost production, there's an environmental cost. And I personally would not want to go that route, because if you're starting looking into lowering your costs, cutting corners, you have an environmental degradation that nationally will pay the price. So rather than going into this blue ocean, let's look at another, into this red ocean, let's go into another blue ocean opportunity that maybe would be better.
I have a more straightforward question. As an investor in New York, right, as someone who wants to invest in Lebanon, what are the means? How can we do it? Are there thoughts in pooling those investments? And maybe IDAL can help us like do the due diligence, the analysis, and say here are something like you showed us today. Is there thoughts on building that fund and then you get investment from different Lebanese? What are the means to invest?
So the question is whether investments could be pooled and organized in places like the US under the guidance of an organization like IDAL to properly do the due diligence and funnel the money into productive investments in Lebanon.
Yes, for sure. Actually, our role is to facilitate any business who's gonna invest or any investor gonna do a business in Lebanon. So if you have any idea or you are looking for ideas, we can sit together. We can provide you a lot of information about what kind of opportunity we have in different sectors. And we established just actually 1 year ago a business support unit for new investors and mainly for startups who can come to our offices and sit with our consultant, legal consultant and financial consultant, and they can help any investor or any startup to establish their business by giving them all advices for free and give them all the needed steps and works and people that they have to work with to establish the company and establish the business. And we provide all kind of advices in terms of financial, legal, and we provide even studies, general studies, high-level studies, not very specific for your specific business in terms of sectors. And we can help as far as we can to make your business possible.
And can I go in with other investors?
Yeah, sure.
You can pull in that money.
Yeah, sure.
Please.
Well, is there any case study other than saffron, wine, and arak? Is there, like, for example, blueberry or avocado that's healthy so people can eat it and also sell it out?
The answer is
The
yes.
question, sorry, the question is, are there other case studies other than saffron, wine, and arak, and other opportunities for us to think about?
Actually, avocado is becoming a huge successful industry in Lebanon, and better quality than the one you buy from Southeast Asia. Much better quality. Saffron, we have I have few slides I could show you about the saffron production, high-end vertical farming strawberries at Eric at our research farm.
How about blueberry?
Blueberry, there are several successful farms of blueberry.
We could raise blueberry.
I think blueberry is a very, very promising industry. We have several experts in our faculty who teach blueberry production, and they have farms.
Okay, what about, I'm sorry.
Using the new techniques.
How about how about the fish? Is there like a farming, for example, of Tripoli for example, salmon or really healthy stuff?
One of our pilot projects at the research farm is not only fish production, but it's actually a wastewater facility, fish production facility that you take that water, it's a kind of a hydroponic, triple ponic system that takes it to the irrigation water. So there are many innovative ideas happening.
But that's a very interesting, especially given the increasing concerns around pollution in the Mediterranean and people's reluctance, unfortunately, to eat fish. Yes.
Are there any efforts to form like cooperatives to give the right scale for investors, also to help, because the land ownership is so small, fragmented? Are there any efforts to form cooperatives that can add value?
So the question is about whether there are proactive efforts to form cooperatives to aggregate production and get scale.
Cooperatives exist in Lebanon actually, but as I mentioned in my presentation, there's 1,200 cooperatives in Lebanon, but 1/3 of them are active. We have problem with the mentality of doing cooperative in Lebanon. The successful cooperative in Lebanon depends on the people who working together in this cooperative. There is some problem with the mentality of cooperation. So this is the problem. So it depends about the group. If they cooperate in the right way, it's the best way to solve one of the main problems of the agricultural sector. But you have to solve the mentality problem of cooperation.
I take this opportunity to really actually, I want to ask the question to the public sector. The earlier challenge I mentioned, which is the food safety, it's a big deal to the farm sector because we are losing trust that our food we eat, is it safe, is it not safe? We did a pilot study and a lot of the non-safety, at least from the microbial, is not from the farm. Mainly it's coming from the lower end at the kitchen. So my question is, how do we develop the platform in which ministries talk to each other? So if you talk about food safety, for example, it touches on the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Water because of irrigation, Ministry of Health. Are there any platforms today in which these complex problems can be solved at a higher level organization where these ministries can actually cooperate beyond colors?
I tried to get you off the hot seat.
Actually, I should redefine my position. I'm a UNDP employee and I work as advisor to the government. I don't represent the government. So my opinion, it's my personal opinion. Okay, actually till now, I don't know if there is any process to find a solution about what you're just saying, what you just mentioned, but it's very crucial to find a solution for this problem, I think, for sure.
I have a quick question about the addressable market for export purposes. One of the issues that we have dealt with in SEAL as we vet projects and talk to people on the ground, whether they're co-ops or different farmers, is even if the product is there and there are farmers producing the produce, there is no market now with all the regional conflicts. The border with Syria is closed, the market there is non-existent. One of the issues that we have identified is ISO certification. To your point, both of you earlier, what sort of form or organized fashion is there in the country today to help those co-ops and those farmers, given that they don't have the level of sophistication and education, to get to the level where they get the appropriate certification and be able to produce and package products that can be competitive in the international markets?
Actually, as I mentioned in my presentation, we have a program to support growers, farmers, and exporters to have ISO and to have the HASP, the HASP, which is similar to ISO, maybe mainly for packing houses. But through our program, during the last 5 years, just 10% they accept or they react to our initiatives.
Is that a cost issue?
No, there's a cost issue, yeah. But in addition, there is some subsidies through our program for those who can get the certificate. So there's some incentives if you get the certificate. That's why 20%, 10%, which is 20 packing houses, get the certificate. But there is still 180 packing house need to be certified. And they should pay a cost, but in parallel, they are getting subsidies from the government. But they didn't respond.
Is it because they don't know better and it's an education?
No. They know it's resistant to change.
Resistance to change. And is that more at the individual level or at the co-op level?
It's individual level.
There was a question in the back. Please go ahead. Okay.
I'm a member of the Lebanese Parliament, and today I just got invited, so I'd like to just participate. And maybe I don't have a question. I do have some answers to some questions.
And you're a member of our parliament.
My name is Elias.
Yes, Hankash.
I'm recently elected, and I'm not a politician. I try not to be.
Where do you represent?
Matan.
From the Cathay party,
From
right?
the Cathay Party. And I'm really honored to be here, and I really appreciate the initiative. I believe I just like to answer a few things that were raised, if I may, gentlemen. I'm sorry. Before I got elected, I used to do a small amount of wine bottles, and we used to market them. So we do have wines that are $2 and $4. What you see today in New York, probably it's because of the value, because it's more profitable, because it's in a restaurant. And someone also answered this. Most of our production in Lebanon are bottles below $20. And if you look well, it's more mass, it's below $10. So you have almost 14,000 liras on shelf. So I'm talking $9 to $8. So this is one. Two, I came in the middle of the presentation, but back in 2005, my colleague and my friend, the late Pierre Schmeil, did present what was so-called back then صناعة لشباب 2010. So it was a vision on the industry and the agriculture. And it was the added value agriculture that we have a very specific type of plants that could be planted only in Lebanon, and eventually it will be used in perfume, cosmetics, and it has value, and it's the right alternative agriculture for cannabis. Going forward, I was an advisor for the Minister of Economy in 2014, and we worked on something called, if I translate it well, it's diplomatic economy, or the diplomacy الاقتصادية, whereby we try to draft bilateral agreements on specific products. And we did work on two things: apples with Russia and wine. And now wine became more and more, with the Ministry of International Affairs, became more and more popular, and we have the right platforms. I'm not saying that we got there in all these, but I think we're progressing, and yes, it's becoming more sexy, agriculture. It's becoming more rational, especially to the upcoming generation, especially with the new innovations, be it the vertical. Today, as a policymaker, I'm a member in the parliamentary committee for legalizing cannabis. Let's not get too excited about that, because we specified that it was for medical use, and this is very specific. And we do have also from AUB Dr. Farhan, who came to the parliament and made a small presentation of that. This is the hot debate in the country. We're debating about that. I think we're a bit too far from coming out with the right compromised draft law that will be agreed by all parties. But we're working on that, and this is the main focus. I think IDAL is doing very well at all levels. We're still far from being on the international map with our small productions. Even with the wine, I think it's the right standard, it's the right quality. And we are working a bit on appellation. I don't know how we do it. We call it in English. I don't know how it's appellation. Okay. We're doing this for, these are not government related, but it's specific to regions. I'll give you an example like the beach in Bikfaya, for instance. We're trying to create this label. The standards, yes, the ISO and all the rest are somehow helping a lot. If we look well at the wine industry, I think it's the right model to copy, to be able to also do what we have to do internationally and regain our position and to compete with big wine countries like Australia, France. I believe we need today, or the farmers do need investors, do need people who believe in their potentials. We still have widelands that are unused or unutilized, unoptimized. And with the new technologies, I think we can create more value to our agriculture. Yes, blueberry, avocado, all these are important. And I can see something very niche growing, which is the mushroom planting that needs humidity, a lot of humidity. And there I went and saw the inch bale, the farmers. So I think, and this is done by a young guy that is almost 30 years old. So the young generation is going towards that. I think we should motivate them further to go deeper and deeper. And the element of people like you who believe in them would be a big reason for them to believe in themselves. So I thank you, and I'm really honored to be here with you, and I appreciate the initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to, we have been working at AUB to build a science to policy platform. In fact, I have communicated several with Inaya Azadeen and with several. But on specific, let me, since you're on the committee of, I'm not sure, when Inaya sent me مشروع القانون تبع الكنبس, I gathered all the experts at AUB, from medicine to public health, to the production, to the extraction, to the processing, to the chemistry. I had about 20 experts. And we really studied the report and we sent it back. I'm hopeful that you're looking at that.
I got, this was 8 months ago, right?
No. It's maybe a month ago, no more than a month ago. I sent it together with Dr. Ma'in Hamzi. We both.
You sent it to, I'm sorry to interrupt on that, but did you send it to all the?
No.
Oh, okay.
I sent it to Inaya. Okay. But my point there.
She's not in the committee. She is not.
Then.
But it's her colleague Ali. Yeah.
So my point here, I think the public deserves to know what's happening. I think the McKinsey report is overhyped. Personally, I think this potentially could be damaging to the sector. When the farmers have this illusion that all of a sudden overnight they're going to make millions, and they abandon the core agriculture, that's very dangerous. First, we don't have a market. We are obliged by the international, we are set by the international community. This is not a tradable commodity. We cannot trade. And second, we don't have a processing facility. So our recommendation, if this is something we want to do, first, let's build a research center. We have several institutions that have expertise in this area, including AUB. Let's build a research center so we know how to process it, how to produce the CBD, the oil, the products. Otherwise, we're going to be a place where we produce it and send the raw material to Holland so that they can process it. I think and there are many dimensions that are not explored. I think the economics is way overhyped about it, and this needs to be looked at very, very carefully. My biggest worry is farmers are going to see this as a ticket to making millions in a one season, and they will abandon their farms, and the sector will suffer. So I would be happy to take that discussion further.
Yeah.
But I think the public needs to know.
Just a quick, I will not take further, but I agree with you. Personally, I have my opinion, and I'm putting this on the table. I don't think the farmers are that excited yet, because with all the feasibility studies that we've seen, it's not that profitable. You know, they measure it by dunam, and we saw, and there are different numbers. So we're not getting really a data that we all agree on. So I believe we're still at a very early stage. No one is very excited about it. When we went into the numbers and we went into the composition of THC and CBD, we saw that, and yes, we realized that I think McKinsey report I think it's not. They said billion. They didn't say 5 billion. Someone said.
No.
So,
No, that's not 5 billion.
it's not 5 billion. Yeah.
Even McKinsey, there's a lot of rumors about it. They start with the big figures,
Yes.
and the final report end up with estimation between 700 million and 1 billion.
Yeah, this is what I said. It's 1
Okay.
billion. Someone
And,
said here 5 billion.
No,
I'm
it's
saying
not 5
only
billion.
one.
It's between
And we're not
700
sure
and 1 billion. And I agree with Dr. Rabia that there's a lot of perception about it, and we don't have to go further before doing the academic research. and the research centers.
I agree.
Will destroy the sector. And if you are talking about 700 million, I think if we can eliminate the losses in the electricity, 2 billions.
Yeah. Yeah,
Let's not go there.
Who's the chair of the agriculture committee? Did they elect a chair?
Agriculture, I don't know, but for the committee of the cannabis, it's yes.
No, the agriculture committee. Anyway, if you know, let me know. I'm just curious.
Okay, I think it's اقتصاد تجارة وزراعة. I'm not sure. I'll check because I'm a member.
Thank you.
It's not my friend.
Hi, Mike Masih, thank you for taking the time to be here. I just have a question. Do you think there's a market for premium vegetables in Lebanon? And the reason that I ask is there's a lot of hydroponic farming happening in the US. But if you look at the market in general, they typically sell the equivalent of one lettuce head for like $4 directly to the consumer. And in Lebanon, the price of the lettuce isn't really comparable to here, and it fluctuates depending on supply from the neighboring countries. So do you think if someone were to invest in hydroponic farming in Lebanon, would they be able to get a return as quick as here? Because they get here kind of 2 to 3 years return because they have such high margins on lettuce heads that are selling for hydroponic farming.
I don't have an answer. Because I've never did this comparison between the return in Lebanon and the return in the States. Maybe we can do it later, but to tell you yes or no, I don't have an answer.
Hi, thank you all for your insights tonight. I have a question regarding the difference in profits for organic food versus just, the regular type of food. When I was visiting Lebanon, actually, biomass was one of the top brands in the supermarket. I wonder if there's an initiative towards that. Thank you.
Organic. So the question is about organic produce.
Correct.
The biomass.
The question is, are there specific initiatives to encourage biomass production?
I think if you're looking at the opportunity, this is an opportunity. The only challenge I have is going back to the standardization and is this organic or not organic? AUB and the Faculty of Agriculture specifically has launched several of these community-based organic, there's a Souk al-Akil, so several of these initiatives that we've launched, and they're all thriving extremely well. But they have a very small niche in terms of who are they catering. So at the moment, it's not accessible to the general public because the prices are way much. I would like to see this becoming the margin between organic and non-organic smaller, so it becomes more of accessibility to the general public, which is not the case today.
There's a program to support export, and there is an extra kind of financial support for organic products. So if you do export for organic products, you will receive financial support from the government.
My name is Mohammed Wahidi. I'm with Warburg International. What we do is we do marketing and distribution for food products. We've been in the business for the past 10 years, so we know almost everything about food products. What we need to support the Lebanese agriculture industry, we need the politicians, the consular, the prime minister, or whoever have the contact with the U.S. Agriculture Ministry to let the farmers export their products, their vegetables, because we're not allowed to bring this product to the U.S. as a vegetable. Like, for example, you have sometimes in the year to the U.S., let's take an example, the mint, the fresh mint. There is no fresh mint in the U.S. Imagine you have 50 states have no mint. They import from Cyprus. They have the ability to export because they are European, they operate under the European Union. So they have the keys or whatever it is. And they export from Israel. So there are some things that we can export with no processing, nothing, simple packing, and send it here and let it work. Because if you export mint, tomatoes, some vegetables, that it's vegetables, no processing, no cost, which is very cheap in Lebanon, to the US, these farmers could make big money.
Which politicians need to do this? The Americans or the Lebanese?
No, we have the Lebanese prime minister or like whoever in charge talk to the US government, talk especially to the agriculture ministry, talk to them and tell them like how we can export our products here, because US aid go to Lebanon, pay $50,000, send machines to like whoever, and that's it. What about exporting the product? What about the next step? We don't have the next step. So they are buying the machines, sitting somewhere in South Lebanon, North, whatever, in a place, and they're not doing anything. While we can do something else. Sending the product, mint, thyme, basil. It's very simple, very easy, like to hear, and like let these small farmers makes a lot of money. It's a big market.
Mr. Hankash, I think that's addressed to you. I'm going to wrap it up at this point. We will commit to circle back with everybody with some takeaways, and we appreciate some of the ideas and some of the commitments from you to take those ideas back to the powers that be. We would also appreciate, and I think certainly IDAL would appreciate, if some of you have picked up an interest in investing in the sector. I know there were more questions than answers here tonight. But if any of you have had a specific interest in a specific area or in the category as a whole, let us know, let Lina know, and we will try to make sure that that interest is matched with more high-level studies and better presentations for opportunities. Thank you, everybody, for coming. I think